Hello viewers, well here I am at Silverstone Racetrack in the wing, and shortly we're going to be seeing an announcement for the Le Mans Esports series. Everything's going esport now, and we're going to see what Le Mans have in store. It's going to be quite exciting. They've got a few rigs here, they're going to have a few competitions, but first we're going to see a press conference and find out what it's all about. Let's see what they've got to say. So then followed a press conference, really just understanding a bit about esports, the growth of esports, how it's expanded, a bit about Motorsport Network, their background, and how obviously we've seen publications such as Autosport gradually incorporating more esports into their content, and the growing importance of esports to automotive brands. It really has transformed. Then following this we had Fernando Alonso come to the stage, which was great for everybody to see there. It was always you know, the driver everybody wanted to see in terms of his stint, of course, at Toyota for the weekend, and he's having great success there. And it was just interesting, you know, Fernando's very passionate about esports himself. He's an excellent esport driver, he has his own team, and fully supports this initiative, if you like, to really get stuck in and find this sort of gaming talent out there. That there's a lot of talent that could potentially be racing drivers but will never have the opportunity due primarily to the restriction on entry into motorsport, cost and sponsorship and all the other elements that come up against you. So this is a really interesting new approach to esports. I caught up with Stephen Hood, the head of esports Motorsport Network, to find out more. Okay viewers, well now I'm joined by Steve Hood, a man many of you may have seen in the past, head of esports Motorsport Network. Different role for you now, Stephen. Le Mans Esports Series, tell me what your role is and what it's all about.
So yes, good to see you again. I feel like it's familiar territory. I'm coming back to the world that I love, to picking up to do something very different. So Le Mans Esports Series. So if you want to know anything about this series, you go to lemansesports.com, and you will be able to register for the upcoming events and receive instruction on exactly how you compete, what you need to do, where you need to be, what time. It walks you through everything. But what we're trying to do here at Motorsport Network, with a joint venture with the ACO, the people behind Le Mans, the world famous competition, the 24-hour race, is find a way to bridge the gap, if you like, between the real world of motorsport, the seemingly now ever-present professional esports teams who are, you know, just as quick as some of the guys that have, you know, got the deals to drive on the real track, and the amateur player, the girls and the guys at home who are maybe put off by the concept of going head-to-head with people who dedicate their time to, you know, getting the absolute best out of a car for any given simulation competition. What we care about is, you know, giving people a route to sample the delight of Le Mans. So I'm head of esports at Motorsport Network, and I've recently joined in order to try and bring about this project, make it hugely successful, and really it's our Motorsport Network's first step in this space. We care about creating racing simulations for a wide audience based on some of the most fantastic series and licenses that are out there today. So it's hugely exciting, there's an awful lot to do, and what we care about right now is people sign up to lemansesports.com and competing in 6 qualifying rounds to get through to the super final at Le Mans in 2019. That will be a 24-hour race comprised of a number of teams, 3 driver teams, working with all the tactics and the strategy that you need in the real world to compete as a group, as a team together, in order to try and win a share of a $100,000 prize pot. So we're putting an awful lot of money into this in order to make it as appealing as possible, but really it's the sense of team competition that I think differentiates us from many others out there.
There is, when you're doing a long distance race, there's a sense of achievement, there's a sense of occasion, there's a sense of pressure on the grid before it starts. That's going to really transform things. People are going to be watching this now and they're saying, right, you've sold it to me, how do I get involved? You go on the website, what racing games do you need to practice on? What equipment do you need? Tell us some of that.
Yeah, sure. So all you need to do is go to lemansesports.com. You register on there, it will give you all the instructions as to what you need to do. We're basing this first season of competition, this series, on Microsoft's Forza Motorsport 7, available on Xbox and PC with the crossplay. And we're doing that in order to just reach a very wide audience. this isn't meant to be some really hardcore elite series for just a very few handful of drivers. The same drivers that you see going from competition to competition. We welcome those with open arms, like any series would. They have their own path. They may well sign up as a professional esports team right at the very beginning, which you can do. But actually, for the average person at home, I'm not as quick as some of the, believe it or not, I'm not as quick as some of the professional esports
sure
drivers.
You're amazing.
It's my job to turn lap after lap, but we'll keep that quiet. It's about trying to get those people in the amateur route, which really lives up to the Le Mans spirit of having, the gentleman drivers and the professional drivers and the different, platinum drivers, silver, gold, all the real concepts that feed into that series and Le Mans especially. And we're just trying to give people a route to sampling esports for the very first time. It isn't scary. It is a lot of fun. Why don't you come on this journey with us?
Well, it certainly sounds very exciting. I think this is the real sort of the transition between motorsport and video games. Video games are getting that level of respect now by the motor industry, and it's bringing it closer together. Very exciting. Final question then, dates. When's all this going to happen in terms of a schedule, and what's the aspect so far that you're most excited about?
Well, it begins right now. So the press conference is just the signalling of our start of our series. The registration site is open, people can sign up and they will be able to start competing almost immediately. They just need to register as individuals or a group of friends that wish to try and get through to the super final. As I've mentioned, individuals can kind of try and qualify on each of the qualifying events that closely follow the WEC calendar. But the teams that sign up will need to accrue sufficient number of points in order to get through to the final. So there's lots of different routes. I'd say the thing that I'm most interested in really is coming back into motorsport and seeing the interest that the real world motorsport series have in gamers today has changed massively in just 4 years since I've been away from it all. I feel like I've been cryogenically frozen. I've been doing my own thing. I come back to this. This is a lot bigger than it used to be. Everybody's getting into this space. But through the power of the Motorsport Network and the reach that we have as a group, I hope to make a really fantastic, inspiring, awe-inspiring, if you like, journey for the average gamer at home.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Stephen, this is very exciting. Really looking forward to the whole event this weekend. Looking forward to how this kicks off in the coming weeks and months and years. And thanks for your time, and we'll see how it progresses. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honour, and I hope we do this a few more times.
Absolutely. So interesting to hear from Stephen. And of course, overarching really is, of course, Motorsport Network are really behind this. I mean, they really want to see esports move forward. I wanted to find out a bit more from the president of Motorsport Network, James Allen, to hear what he had to say in terms of the direction now moving forward. Hello viewers, well now I'm joined by the president of the Motorsport Network, James Allen. James Allen, thank you for seeing us today.
Pleasure.
Wow, I mean, I look at motorsport 10 years ago, something like this would have been impossible. Now we're seeing the transition between racing games and motorsport. It's being taken seriously. What was the catalyst, if you like, to Motorsport Network saying, right, we want to get involved in this, there's an opportunity here, we're taking it forward?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, I've been in this sport for 30 years, and I've seen it evolving a lot. And you can just see, generally, globally, I mean, esports is really taking off. And I think what excites me about esports with regards to sort of, sim racing, if you want, is that the competitor is doing exactly the same thing with the same controls as the elite racer out on the track. So, Fernando Alonso in his racing car is using a steering wheel, gear change mechanism, brake and a throttle, and that's the same thing as you're using here. If I'm playing FIFA as Cristiano Ronaldo, I'll never have his body shape, unfortunately, and I'll never have his ability to score on the turn because physically I'm not doing it, I'm pushing buttons. And that's one thing I think our sport has that's really unique, which really lends itself to it. I can clearly see, I've got two boys, 17 and 14, I can clearly see that this is potentially the new grassroots of motorsport. It's an expensive sport to get into. Fernando, all these guys, they had to struggle to get the money together from their families and sponsors to buy karts and then work their way up the ladder. We're seeing now people coming into the motorsport funnel, being exposed to racing through this kind of esports and gaming and that sort of thing. And both fans and competitors, it's a new entry to the funnel for us. We're a digital first media business. Of course, we've got the platforms, we've got the ability to reach everybody. The two fit perfectly together, and in the ACO and Le Mans, we've got the world's greatest race, and what's not to like about it?
Well, I think that's always it. I think video games have always given you the, I suppose, you've wanted to be your heroes, you've wanted to emulate your heroes, and like you say, the inputs are similar on the controls. We've seen changes in terms of simulation being used more to save money for Formula One teams and such like. I suppose we're seeing more opportunity in terms of the motor industry. I think Gran Turismo, and you would drive the car in Gran Turismo you actually owned or you wanted to own. And I suppose now, like you say, you're closer to emulating your heroes. So in a way, Motorsport Network is the transition now between the two. Where do we see this going in the next few years?
Well, it's important to have a foot in both camps,
yeah.
Obviously. I mean, I can see esports becoming as big as the sport itself. And why not? You know, it can have its own parallel life. You know, I think the areas of transition between the two are really interesting. Not saying at all for a moment that this is all about finding the next Fernando Alonso and sticking him in a Le Mans car. If it happens, great. And I'm sure there will at some point along the way.
To see it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's happened before. I mean, there's been other gamers who've done quite well jumping into racing. It is different, you know. But no, I think it's a brilliant journey. It's an important thing for us to be part of and to tell that story, because that's what we're world-class storytellers. And this is a fascinating environment. You know, you're one yourself. Anything's possible, isn't it?
It's absolutely possible. I guess final question is: you've seen the motor industry change a lot. I mean, as I say, 10 years ago I put this to motor industry, and a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy. I sat with racing drivers getting into cockpits, and they were braking in the wrong place and flying off. And now I see racing drivers, they get it. It just clicks at some point. You brake at that marker board in real life, do it on the game, and then they start to find it. I suppose for yourself, what's the most exciting element now moving forward? Is there something that you've learned that perhaps you dismissed years ago, that perhaps now you look at it and say, actually, this technology is coming to a place where I understand it. You can drive for that now. Good to see you in action as well.
No, I'm not particularly fast, but my son's beat me hands down. Yeah. I don't know. I think I've always liked change. I've always embraced change, and I find this time very interesting. You know, this is a time of great disruption. The world's biggest hotel company doesn't own any hotels. The world's biggest media platform doesn't create any media. You know, the world's biggest taxi firm doesn't actually own any taxis. This is a time of great disruption, and it's only accelerating and getting faster. We believe we've got a great platform for the future. We're digital first media business, and we're fully behind all of this stuff. And you know, where it takes us is a very, very exciting journey. I've done 30 years at a top level in motorsport, mostly Formula One, a lot of time spent in Le Mans as well, and I'm as excited about this as I ever was. So to answer your question, I think the thing that excites me the most is where the disruption takes us.
Well, I do. So it certainly sounds very exciting today. Certainly we've come a long way. James Allen, thank you very much for your time.
Great pleasure.
So I thank James Allen and Stephen Hood for their time. It was an interesting conference. Certainly left me with a lot to learn on the website, and I'll be looking into that more in the coming days and getting more of that onto the VV forum and various articles, and we'll be following updates as well in terms of progress. This is still a very early stage for esports and for this project, but $160,000 prize pot, not to be sniffed at. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And there'll be several more videos coming up this week, or in the next few days, should I say, in terms of my experience at Le Mans, in terms of WEC at Silverstone for the weekend, and a little tour behind the scenes as well. So keep an eye out for those, and also my grid walk and various interviews. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon.